Hi, my name's Simon Morris and I'm a Product Development Manager for Abu. I've brought you along today to the upper reaches of the River Avon to take you along with me on a roving session targeting hopefully chub and barbel. The reason I've picked a roving approach today is primarily because of the weather, because it's forecast as very bright and very clear. The river conditions are similar and very good visibility, and the water levels are quite low. So what I'm going to be looking for today is the kind of swim that you maybe would normally walk past. I'm looking for the little overhangs, undercuts, the little deeper, slower areas where on a bright day, hopefully the better fish are going to be hiding. The key part to approach like this is to keep moving. So what you'll see today is you'll see me fishing a lot of swims, a lot more than you normally would on a normal day. So we're going to stop, bait, move on, and hopefully where I'm going to take you now is to show you some of the swims that I would choose and the reasons why I would pick them. Now, before I mention the first swim, I must stress a couple of important points that start way before you get to the river. Take consideration where you park your car, don't slam your doors. When you walk along the river, try and keep your shadow from the water, pay attention to where the sun is, and all these things will help you to find fish on a roving approach. Now, taking you into the first swim, I'd already baited a couple of spots on my way down to it, but simply could not walk past it. It was a kind of swim that probably never gets fished. It was awkward. It had a large tree that had fallen into the water, which left an uprooted stump, but what that gives you on a roving session is it gives you cover. It means you can get very close to the river very easily. So what I did, snuck in with a bucket of pellets and dropped a few pellets in, bit of bait down the inside margin right under my feet. The flow comes very close in on this bend, and I'm guaranteeing that there's an undercut in this bank, and that's where I think the fish will be sitting in these clear conditions. Once I'd pre-baited, drew myself away from the swim, got my rod set up, got everything ready, net in position, all the things that you're going to need when the action happens. Once I'm happy that everything's in the position I need, I creep forward. And what I managed to do was, without sticking the rod out over the water, just lower a bait in very close to my own bank, no more than a yard out, just on the edge of this overhanging bush. In actual fact, first cast, within 2 to 3 minutes, I had a small chub on. Gave a great account of itself in the clear conditions, shot up upstream, and was a fantastic fight. And sure enough, that was the only fish I had from that swim, but I didn't leave without dripping a little more bait in. So now, I'll take you on to the swim 2. So, the second swim I tackled on this session couldn't have been more different from the first. It's a very tight S-bend, and when the water levels are up, the water really pounds around this S-bend and cuts a big undercut out under your own bank. But whereas last time I had the option of the tree to use for cover, here there's nothing. I'm very much on the skyline. So, alright, I looked a bit silly, hopefully no one was watching, but I crawled up to the edge of the river on my belly and sneaked a look over the edge. Now straight away I could see, because it was a bit more gravelly, a bit more streamer weed and a bit clearer, that I was going to have to scale my tackle down. I always come with the hope of a barbel and scale back down, and that way you don't get a surprise barbel first cast that breaks you off. So I dropped down to a 4-pound fluorocarbon hook link, and because maybe for a more natural approach, a bunch of worms, and there isn't a chub in the country that won't eat a bunch of worms. Sure enough, first put in again, 3 or 4 minutes in, the tip goes round. An absolutely fantastic chub on a clear day. It probably weighed about 3 pounds. Because there was a bit more water in this swim, and I don't think I've made too much disturbance, I actually stayed in the swim a little longer than I normally would and managed 2 other small chub as well, although the size was decreasing. I think I'd had the best from the swim. Obviously they knew I was there now, and before I left I dribbled a few more pellets in, a little bit more bait, just so that perhaps back on my way down the river at the end of the session I could have another stop in here, because it had already done one really fantastic fish for me. So we'll take you on to swim 3, which again is something completely different, but that's what happens on a roving session. Every swim's a different one. Okay, so swim 3 takes us upstream of the S-bend that we fished earlier into a much shallower, much faster stretch. Now obviously this doesn't seem like a logical choice in very clear, bright conditions, but what this does give you is broken water, which helps mask your outline on your silhouette, and also there was a lot of streamer weed and reeds folded over in this area, which I thought would give the fish cover. Again, you needed a stealthy approach here, and luckily there was quite a large bush to one side of me, so I used the silhouette of that to approach the water. That way there's no way the fish are going to take your outline on the horizon. Once I'd snuck in, it was first cast counts, and that's often the case in these roving style sessions, that your first cast has got to be bang on. If you splash, if you drop, if you break off, then you could spook anything that's in that swim that's going to be your first bite. So took a bit of time, took my care, and got my first cast bang on between the streamer weed, right where I needed it. And I'd not even got my rod into the rest before it tore out of my hand. And again, another cracking chub, not as big as the first one this time, but out of a swim that most people would have walked past because you could see the bottom. I thought it was a cracking result, and it just shows don't ignore any swim when you're roving. Put a bit of bait in one cast. You only have to give it 3 or 4 minutes. You'll soon know if there's anything there. So now I'll take you through the tackle I've used today for the roving approach. Starting with the rod, I've picked a 12-foot rod that we've got under development for Abu. It's a 1.5 pound test curve, and it's absolutely perfect for the kind of fishing we're doing today. It's more than capable of dealing with any chub that swims, and should we get a bonus barbel, then we've got plenty of power to deal with that also. Coupled with this, I've got one of the new Abu free spools. It's a cardinal. It's about like a 30 size reel, which I think is absolutely perfect for this kind of fishing. It's got a super smooth, reliable clutch and free spool facility, so that we know that we can deal with whatever comes along. Main line, ever reliable, big game for me, always has been, very strong, very reliable. If it gets through the gravel, through the streamer weed and stuff, you know you can rely on it. Leading us on into the kind of hook, link and rig that we've been using, fluorocarbons. Everyone's using them, there's a lot of talk about them, but on a clear river approach like today, absolutely there's nothing else you can use. I've picked the trilene version here in both 8 pound and 4 pound, and you've seen me use those for the various approaches we've done through the film today. For the business end, I use a flat lead to keep down out of the flow, to try and keep the hook bait as still as I can. We're only going to get one cast, I want it to stay where I put it. I use a very simple lead clip system with the tail rubber just nipped on the end, so if that does get caught in anything, any rocks, any streamer weed, the lead's going to come off and we're back in contact with the fish. The only thing that's a little bit different here is a thing called a solar PVA clip. This allows me to place a PVA bag of pellets right at the top of the rig. It's very important in flowing water for me that. A lot of people hook the PVA onto the hook end. All that happens is the flow washes the pellets away from your hook bait. So by putting the PVA bag at this end, it washes the bait right past your hook bait consistently. So to take you through the baits I've used today, we've used luncheon meat, a firm favourite for chub and barbel. I always have a stick of pepperami in the bag, nice and spicy, something a little bit different, can get you out of a tight spot. You can't go anywhere without halibut pellets, so I've always got halibut pellets with me. Boilies, mini boilies, very popular with chub and barbel now on the rivers approach. And today also, you can't come to a river like this without bringing worms with you. So to summarise it all, it's all about being mobile, travelling light, and most of all, keep on the move. And there she is, all 12 pound one prime Avon barbel. She's a PB for me, it's a new record for the stretch, and it just proves that even on a hard day when the sky's clear and the river's clear, you can still winkle out something really special. Cool, some weight in this, but she's been out long enough now, let's get her back.